Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on Destiny 2 using the RTX 3060 Ti. We're running a Ryzen 3700X with 32GB of RAM running at 3200 MHz as well. Alright, let's jump into the settings. We're going to be starting it off at 1080p on the low preset. I'm highly expecting us to be running into a CPU bottleneck at 1080p up to like high settings. I would imagine high settings. I would expect us to be fully maxed out on our GPU side of things with the CPU, but medium and low, we're going to 100% run into a CPU bottleneck. It's not bad actually. We're sitting at 70% GPU usage right now and still pulling 140 FPS. And one more thing about this game is that the overlays are blocked by the anti-cheat, so you can't just use that. We can't use that normal overlay. So I'm gonna stick with the NVIDIA one since that one actually works. I've set it to the advanced preset, which is funny to say, but it's still missing the VRAM usage and the RAM usage of our computer, which is kind of weird since it has GPU clock and memory clock, but it doesn't have VRAM usage. But it's okay, I'll put it on the screen as I go through each resolution and preset. Alright, so the VRAM is sitting at 3 gigs and RAM usage is sitting at 9.7 gigs. And that's for the full system, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of high for playing at low settings, but yeah. Alright, playing at 1440p. I'll just start it off with VRAM usage is sitting at 3.2 gigs now, and our RAM usage is the same, sitting at 9.7 gigs. GPU is already fully maxed out here, that's crazy. Even at 1440p loads, we're not running to a bottleneck. GPU is sitting at 95%, FPS is sitting in the 140s. I'm not feeling any stuttering, by the way. I forgot to mention it. Since we don't have a frame time graph or frame rate graph, I gotta just say how the game is feeling. And there's no stuttering or any lagginess at all to the game. The aiming feels very fluid, very smooth, and can't really feel any of the FPS drops. VRAM at 4K low is sitting at 3.5 gigs. RAM usage has actually jumped up to 10 gigabytes right now, so it's moved up by 300 megabytes. FPS has dropped to the high 90s to the 80s as well. That's crazy, but I guess it's expected. This is not a 4K card, but I can still play 4K. It's not meant for 4K gaming, but it's still doing great. The game looks fantastic as well. Low settings, I don't really see any issues with the graphics or draw distance or any of that. Obviously, it will look better as we go, but if you want to play at 4K, you can. So you'll be pulling like 80 to 100 FPS. And there's no DLSS, I believe, as well, so we're just stuck with our raw GPU horsepower. Alright, playing at medium settings. These are our presets. And turn off motion blur. Apply. Back to 1080p. You can see the massive difference in sharpness between 1080p and 4K. GPU is not fully maxed out, sitting at 75%. I just auto by accident. That's not... kill a tank guy at least. But actually, it seems like they've nerfed the hunter. Could have shot like 10 arrows with the old patch. I don't know when they changed it, but they've definitely changed it quite a bit. A pretty massive nerf. I guess it was pretty OP for killing tanks. FPS obviously isn't going to be affected. We should be able to push around like 170 FPS if we were in CPU bound. VRAM is sitting at 3 gigabytes now, so it's actually dropped by 500 megabytes since we are playing at 1080p. And system memory is sitting at 10.1 gigs, so it's actually slowly climbing up as we go. You gotta keep in mind that your FPS is affected by the planets that you're on, you know, what's happening on the screen, and how many enemies are there, how many effects are being played. All of that will affect your FPS, so it's not the most accurate since I'm just playing through the strike, but it will give you a decent understanding on how the game's gonna run. Fights ain't about to happen, so we actually do fall to the low 100s. That's crazy. But I'm not really surprised, to be honest. Oh, I can't shoot the shields. What I should be using... I'm getting stuck on... let's check the VRAM quickly. VRAM is sitting at 3.3 gigabytes. And our RAM usage is sitting at 10.3. Playing at 80 FPS now, so we're getting pretty close to that 60 FPS limit that we have. Okay. VRAM is sitting at 3.7 gigabytes, and the RAM usage is sitting at 10.4 gigs. So obviously we have plenty of headroom on our VRAM side of things. We have 8 gigabytes available to us, I believe, with this GPU. So using up almost half, not quite. But the game feels smooth all around. No stuttering, no lagging. The game feels great. No complaints. So I'm kind of worried for 4K high and ultra. We're gonna for sure fall below 60 in those. But hopefully... Whoa, I'm getting sent. soon as I altered, we dropped down into the 60s, the low 60s. There we go. 1080p. Are we still bottlenecked? No, we're not. Okay. We do get some dips into the 80s, but for the most part, we are sitting at 95% GPU usage, 98% GPU usage. FPS is easily over 100, sitting at 1. Okay, we actually fall down to the low 100s as soon as I say that. But on average, we're sitting at 120 to 140. I'll check the VRAM usage in a second. But honestly, 1440p looks great. 1080p looks a bit pixelated once you drop down from 4K and 1440p to 1080p. But other than that, the game looks great. Runs pretty great as well. 4K, it's a bit too much for this card, unless you want to play at medium settings, and you're cool with 60 FPS. Let's check the VRAM. Alright, VRAM is sitting at 3.2 gigs, so 1080p, not very demanding on the VRAM side of things, which makes sense. And RAM usage is sitting at 10.4 gigs, so it hasn't moved much. Alright, 1440p high settings, we're gonna fall into the 80s for sure, right? Okay, we're getting 110 to 120 FPS right now. Let's get into a fight. Let me throw some grenades. Oh, more grenades now. Is it V? Let's throw a grenade. Getting 90 FPS with the grenade. I always forget the keybinds in this game. This game has always ran great for me. I've never had any stuttering or lagging issues at all, so I'm not really surprised that it's running this well. It's very optimized. It's optimized quite well. FPS wise at 4K, it's very demanding, but 1440p and 1080p, not really having any issues at all. 4K, we're getting 88 FPS at high settings, but that's not really, we're not really seeing too much happen on the screen at once, so this kind of makes sense. Let's go ahead and use a rocket launcher real quick, see how much we can make the FPS drop by. 62 FPS, 61. Okay, we can easily fall into the 50s, I believe, with the by ult, but we're just waiting for it to come up right now. But even in the low 60s, the game feels quite great. The aiming isn't as fluid, I guess, as playing at 144. Alright, VRAM is sitting at 3.8 gigs, and system RAM is sitting at 10.2, so it's actually dropped by 200 megabytes. Alright, playing at max settings, 1080p, disable motion blur once again. Let's go. Still holding over 120 FPS, but we're gonna fall into the 90s for sure, I feel like. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff happening. I think I might be playing solo here because I don't really see my teammates helping me. There's a lot of... I'm gonna get overrun in a second. I don't have enough damage to destroy all that. Yeah, there we go. Oh no. We are sitting in the 80s off the bat, so we're gonna easily fall into the 70s and 60s, I would imagine. Game runs very smooth. We actually fell into the mid 60s just then. Wow, okay. So 1440p max settings might not be the move, because we might actually fall into the high 50s with this. I don't remember if I've already said this before, but there's really no reason to be playing at max settings or using presets. The smart thing to do is to go ahead and actually tune the preset to your liking and just disable some of the unnecessary options that are very taxing on your GPU or CPU. VRAM is sitting at 3.5 gigs and RAM usage is sitting at 10.2 gigs, so not much has changed there. I'm playing at 4K. Oh, this feels laggy now. This for sure feels like... Are we playing in 40s? Yep, yes we are. Getting 40 FPS here now. Definitely do feel the lag when I shoot. Or when I scope in, very obvious that it's lagging. Okay, let's check the VRAM. VRAM is sitting at 4 gigs and system memory hasn't been changed either. But honestly, the graphical changes at highest versus medium and high aren't too different. I can't really see a massive jump in quality difference. So I would just stick with medium if you're playing at 4K. And at 1440p, I would stick to medium and high. 1080p, you can stick to high and ultra if you want. Depends what FPS range you want to go for. Alright, that's it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed and found it useful. If you did, give it a like and subscribe, I highly appreciate it. See you next time.